Hi everybody, I wanted to take a few minutes and show you how to use the class website, where you can find things, and how we set up our notebooks for this class. We use this class website for everything, so you want to get very familiar with it. This is the home page. You can see there's colorful tabs along the top. There's a little welcome note from me, as well as some commonly used links that you may want quick access to. We'll start with the calendar. Since we're doing remote teaching this year, I've thought that it'd be a little bit easier to have a more detailed calendar than normal. So if you click on the one-stop shop link, it will take you to this document. This will kind of walk you through everything that you need, lots of websites that we're using this year, more than a normal year. You can jump to different weeks. Explains how we use our notebook. And then you'll see this. You'll see basically a very detailed list of everything we did in class, everything that you need to do for homework. There's little comments and reminders from me. At the beginning of the semester, it's going to be a lot more detailed. As you get used to things, I won't have to give you as many comments and descriptions. There are links directly on here that will take you to documents you might need. This is where you go to find everything we did in class, what your homework is. If you're absent, you're going to want to come to here. Next, the Notebook tab. This is a very important tab. It's going to show you all the pages in our notebook. If you lose a handout, you can click the link and you can print another one. If you are absent for the notes, you can click the link and it takes you to a copy of the PowerPoint. And you can scroll through it and you can see what you missed, take your notes. At the end of the PowerPoints, you'll see a link to me doing the presentation as a YouTube video. So you can listen to all my comments and all my explaining that I would have done in class. You can access that if you need to review or if you are absent. Pages that are in yellow are ones that should be done and in your notebook. Anything that's in blue would be stuff that we haven't done yet. You can see everything you need will be here. You can also find what we call the targets, which is what we write at the top of our page. It's our goal for the day. You can find our warm-ups. We call those jump starts. You can find pictures of my example notebook. Lots and lots of things you can find here. The Labs tab just has some general lab info. It's not as important this year since we are remote. The Resources tab has lots of extras. There's a couple different links to digital textbooks. There's the link to my YouTube channel. There's periodic table you can print. There's links to other people's websites. There's extra practice that I have based on chapter. There's worksheets and videos. Some of these are silly songs you can watch. There's lots and lots of practice here that you can use. About your class kind of goes into some of the nuts and bolts like the syllabus. You can read the syllabus and see all the requirements. You can see the grade breakdown, a list of supplies you need each day, things like that. A little bit about me is on this pink tab. You can learn that I grew up in Half Moon Bay. You can see I went to college and grad school in Oregon. I took a break after school and went to culinary school for a little bit, which was pretty fun. And then I went back and I started teaching at Doherty. Okay, you can see a little bit about me there. Next, I'm going to go back to the home page and show you these commonly used links. So I put the one-stop shop links on the front as well. Yes, they're on the calendar. They'll also be on Google Classroom, but they're here also if that's helpful. The other link on here I want to show you is for our warm-ups. So what I show the class every day is a PowerPoint that will have an agenda. It will go over whatever we do in class. It will talk about the homework. remind people to use that one-stop shop, so you can see anything we did in class that maybe you were absent for or you need to go back and look at again will be on this warm-up, I call them jump starts document. If you need to jump to a different week, you can click and it'll take you to that week. So you can see now this is a different week, but it's the same idea. I have a little welcome slide, agenda. Maybe I show people how to set up their notebook that day. We take notes, whatever we happen to do in class. So that's another helpful document, is that Jumpstart document. Okay, next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to show you my actual teacher example notebook. I'm going to walk you through that. And by showing you my example notebook, you'll learn how we set up our notebooks. We do something called an interactive notebook, where everything gets glued into one spiral bound notebook. And I'll show you how we take our notes, and you can learn how to set them up and how you finish them for homework each night. Okay, so let's switch to that. I'd like to flip through the pages for the first couple of pages and walk you through what your notebook will look like. So here's my spiral bound notebook. Page 1, you're going to do an all about me assignment. You're going to learn a little bit about me through mine. You'll do yours and you'll share it with me. I can't quite fit the whole thing under the camera, so sorry about that. We'll kind of scoot it back and forth, best I can do. Page 2, we'll take some safety notes. We'll do some questions about safety. Page 3 is some common laboratory equipment in a chemistry class. Page 4 and 5 teach you kind of about how we do the notebook. So we take all of our notes on the right-hand side. This is where we're going to learn all our information. We're going to take notes in a special way. We're going to really interact with our notes while we're taking them. The left side is where we practice. This is where we process what we learn. We're going to do things like creative assignments, writing assignments, drawing little cartoons, quick writes. Maybe I have you do a little graphic organizer. Maybe I give you a writing prompt. Maybe ask you to do something silly like write me a poem. Just trying to use various parts of the brain, because research shows that if we can involve more parts of the brain, that we will remember the information better. When you're nervous and stressed out on a quiz or a test, your brain needs connections to be able to reach into your brain and pull out the information that you've learned. And if you can store information in different parts of your brain with different types of connections, even when you're in a stressful environment, and your body and your brain are exhibiting stress and not functioning at their optimal level, you'll be able to reach that information and retrieve it and answer that question on the quiz much better than if you hadn't done some more creative processing techniques. A lot of chemistry is practice problems and worksheets. That's just the nature of the subject. And so any worksheets that we do would also go on these left side pages, because that is processing when you practice. Page 6 is, here's my example. Yours may not look like this. I did a processing activity, and I did a type of a poem up here, and down here I decided to make a little crossword puzzle. So you can see I did a variety of things. Here's a lot of ideas. Sometimes people will tell me that if they don't know what to do, that they're stuck, they're not creative, they don't have an idea of, what they could do. Well, here's lots of ideas. And on the back, here's even more ideas. If you come up with something that's not on this list, that's awesome. Just tell me and I'll put it on the list for next year. This list down here has grown every year. I always find something new and interesting to throw on there that somebody else has done. You'll notice that this page has a front and a back. This is what we call a flippy. We don't really have a better name for it. It's not very creative, but that's what we got. We call it a flippy. And we just put glue on the margin, and then that allows us to use the front and the back of a page. So if I ever ask you to make a flippy, you can do that. You can make it flip up, You can make it flip down, you can make it flip left or right, it does not matter. Page 8 kind of explains what the requirements are. I will walk you through those as we do different types of assignments, but please read them when you have a chance. Page 9 here gives you some example rubrics. I am not saying that everything is 3 or 5 points. That's not realistic, but I think these example rubrics give you a really good idea of kind of the categories of the work. Like 0 does not meet standards. I can't grade it. You didn't do it. You know what a 0 looks like. A 1, a lot of things are not done, or they're missing, or you didn't follow the instructions, or it's clear that you kind of did it 5 minutes before class started. 2 is, it's okay. It's mostly done. You didn't follow quite everything. Maybe you left off a couple problems. And then a 3 is, that's great. I would love to take a picture of that. I'd love to use that in my PowerPoint as an example. You did a great job. Everything's there. So it just gives you some general guidelines. Page 10 is what we call Costa's house. There are different levels of questions. Some questions are what we call basic. Some are processing. Some are creating. Level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 questions are not bad questions. They're just simple questions. It's a definition, or what's the equation, or list these things. So these are not bad. You need vocabulary, you need definitions to start thinking on a higher level. But we don't want to stop at level 1. If all we did was level 1 questions, we wouldn't get very far. Level 2 is when you start to think about things. So you take some definitions that you've learned and maybe you compare and contrast them. That would be level 2. Level 3 is really where you are starting to kind of invent new things or think about things in a totally different way, or you're trying to make predictions. Now that you've learned some information, you're trying to predict what might happen. So there's some sentence starters and some keywords over here. When I ask you to write questions, you can use this to help guide you. Page 11, we'll talk about the different types of notes. Almost all the notes we do are going to be KCQ notes, and I'll explain what that means later. Sometimes we might do other types, but for the most part, it's going to be this KCQ type. 12 and 13 are what I call unit intro pages. So every time we start a new chapter, we're going to have basically a divider that it distinguishes that that's where the chapter starts. You're going to have to do some visuals, you'll list key terms, you'll write some example questions. You do not do this when we start the chapter because you don't know any of it yet. We'll glue them in as a divider, or if you're not printing things or you couldn't get a packet, then you'll just draw the boxes onto your paper by hand. That's totally fine. And then you fill this out as we're learning things. This is not due until after we're finished with the chapter. Page 13, this is called cross-cutting concepts. There are topics in chemistry that are repetitive. We see them repeat in all sorts of subjects, bio and chem and physics and engineering. All sciences have things that relate to scale and proportions and quantity. All science has things that have patterns. So I will give you some of these topics, and I will ask you to fill in things from the chapter that kind of fall into those categories. We make this into a pocket. We're only going to put glue on the edge. If you're not printing things, then just use a piece of binder paper and make a pocket out of binder paper. We can put little things in here during the chapter, extra practice, quizzes, things like that. This is a worksheet. You can see it's a flippy. And here's what a set of notes looks like. When we do KCQ notes, we're going to have a target up at the top in red pen. They have literally shown that our brain responds differently to red pen. Different areas of our brain light up and start turning on, basically. The target needs to always be at the top in red pen. If you cannot get a red pen, then on one of those pickup days, I will get you a red pen inside the material bags. We have a title, nice and big and bold. You can take notes however you want. I don't need them in a particular format. I just need you not to squish your notes all really tight together. Make sure things are nice and spread out. You got some space. Our brain needs some visual gaps in concepts and ideas. So we need to make sure that we're seeing some gaps around key information. Then, either while you're taking the notes or at the end for homework, you need to go back through and you need to add what we call color annotations. So you could use different color pens, you can use markers and highlighters, but you need to add at least 3 different colors to help our brain pop things out of the notes at us. I'm not asking you to do an art project. Please do not get so focused on it looking pretty that you forget the purpose of the assignment. I like calling these annotations because I think that reminds you that they're supposed to be purposeful. So please don't just scribble the entire background one color. Please don't spend 2 hours drawing cute little pictures. Really focus on the intention of this is to help our brain latch on to information. At the bottom, you're going to draw 3 boxes, K, C, Q. K stands for key terms. List all the key terms. C is connections. You can make a connection between something you watched in a movie, something you read in the news, something that you learned in a previous class. Just needs to be specific. Please don't write 7th grade science or biology. Right? Try to make it something a little more specific. Then you're going to write 2 questions that relate to the material on the page. You do not have to answer the questions. One thing that I find just absolutely fascinating is that they've learned that the benefit to our learning, our retention of information, our scores on our quizzes and our grades in our class get a lot of benefit from writing the questions, but you don't need to answer them. So you taking the time to try to come up with a question is what gets you those benefits. That's why you're going to see an improvement in your learning. You can have level 1 questions, but you can't have both of them be level 1. So what is a compound? That's a level 1. It's a definition. I could point to an answer somewhere on my paper. This is a higher level question. Compare and contrast molecules and compounds. Well, I have to know the definition of a molecule. I have to know the definition of a compound, and then I got to put them together and think about it. That's not something I'm going to be able to point to necessarily as an answer. I really need to process it. So you need to have at least 1 higher level question. Okay? So I know this is a lot of information. I know you're getting a lot of information from all your classes. I know that it's going to be a long couple days. We're going to get a weekend soon. You can kind of recoup and breathe a little bit, and then, we'll get in the swing of things. We'll take notes. I'll help you. I'll remind you of what to do as we go. I'll tell you which page we're working on. I'll make sure that we check in and see if anybody has questions. So as long as you're trying your best and you're asking me questions and using that class website, it's going to be okay. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat in Zoom. You can raise your hand and ask me, during the Zoom class. You can email me. There's lots and lots of ways to get in touch with me this year, even if we are remote. So I hope you have had a good first day, good second day. I hope all your Google Classrooms are linked and working, and all your Zoom links work, and you can log into everything you need to log into. And I will see you on Zoom soon. Bye, everybody.